hurt, and I dislocated. I like tore my meniscus in my right knee, and it was really, really bad. And I went and I did the surgery and I did the rehab. So while I was in rehab, I was like, dude, I have to come back with something completely different. And I didn't have the name to go with it. I was still Mr. 450, but I was slowly changing my look into what Mecha Wolf was going to be. And finally, Sami Callihan from Impact Wrestling, he's like, hey, man, you look like a werewolf. Boy, you look like a machine. You're like a Mecha Wolf. You should be the Mecha Wolf. And he just kept bugging me for like 3 weeks straight. He just kept saying this over and over. And finally, we're like about to do like this Wrestle Circus pay-per-view this day. And he's like, hey, let me see your phone. So I gave him my phone. And he sends himself all these pictures from my phone with like the look that I had at the time. And just changes my Twitter, changes my banner, changes everything to the Mecha Wolf. And he's like, what do you think? It looks cool? I was like, yeah, it looks pretty cool, but what am I going to do about this? He's like, you got to do it today, man. You got to do it today. You got to change your name today. Like, we have a night pay-per-view today. Today's the day to do it.
We are live. What up, though, everybody? This is Kyle, and you are back watching Knockouts and 3 Counts. And as promised, man, we've got quite the action-packed week for you. If you were paying attention this past Tuesday, we had El Incotable, if I can spit it out, Gino Medina on the show with us this past Tuesday. And tonight we are joined by, you know him as Mr. 450, you know him as Mecha Wolf, you know him as a lot of things. How you doing, brother, man?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm over here in TJ. I know the time is a little crazy. Time change is a little crazy. I was just sharing the interview right here on my Facebook. But yeah, man, I'm doing pretty good. Training every day, you know, just getting ready for bigger things coming up this year.
So I know you're not dealing with what we are here, although since we were talking before we went on air that you were living in Chicago at one point, I know you're used to the cold. Hell, at least here, it's like a milestone right now. It's all of 50 degrees, but shit, it's better than what we had when I got back from Texas, man. What's it looking like down there in TJ, bro?
It's actually really hot. It was cold. It's kind of cold. Like we live right by the beach. We're like a block and a half away from the beach, so it gets a little cold at night. But right now it's like really hot, man. You could go out in a tank top and in shorts, and it's no problem, you know. At nighttime, though, it gets a little chilly, more like hoodie weather, you know, nothing too crazy.
Hey, I like it, dude. Like I said, I could get used to that because we're getting ready. If you guys haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're headed down to Jacksonville for AEW Revolution next weekend. So at least we're going to be getting some warmer weather. We're going to be headed down there and linking up with the homie Mega Ran. So make sure you check him out live on the show this next Thursday. So I'm with you, man. I'm just happy that there's some warmer weather in my future. So so what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, all things considered, this year for a Detroit winter, man, we got pretty lucky. This was like our only major snowfall. I mean, I work outside all year round, so I can't complain. That's for damn sure.
All right. Well, before we get into the wrestling part of the show, which everybody is coming here to listen about, let's talk a little bit about music, man. So before we went on the air, you know, for those of you who don't know, you need to get hip with it and check out the man's band, which is also called Monster Wolf, man. So tell me a little bit about that. First of all, that's got to be pretty dope that you get. There you go. See, he's got the album right there for you. See, master of marketing. This man's ready to go. Got his shit on command. Well, tell me a little bit about that, man. Like, has music been something that's been heavy in your life, like your whole life? And how dope is it that you get to come out to the ring to your own music?
Music, it was always a thing that was part of my life growing up. I think music got a lot of us out of a lot of bad things, you know, whether it could be like a breakup, a parent passing away, or somebody you love passing away, or like it could remind you of good times you had with like close people to you. Music to me was always like a very big part of my life growing up. So when I was growing up before I got into wrestling. I had like my own like local bands and stuff like that, and I would roadie for other local bands, and it was always something that I wanted to do. And the second that I had the opportunity to do it and use wrestling kind of to piggyback off the music, piggyback off my wrestling, I said, you know what, let's go for it. I got really lucky because I was able to like meet a lot of people that are in the music business, that have been in the music business for a long time on an independent level, because I would go to a bunch of shows in the area wherever I would live at any time. So if I was in Florida and there was a band that I liked, I would go. If I was in Florida and there was like a local show with local bands, I would go as well and try to mingle and try to get to meet other people and like try to make connections. And that's basically how the whole Monster Wolf thing started. It really started with like me meeting these guys because I wanted a new entrance song. And they ended up writing the song, the Mecha Wolf song for me. And I was like, you know what, dude, like, why don't you guys, and then why don't we like put a band together? So like me and the bass player originally, Roger, he was like, well, I know this really good drummer. And then I had met this other guy, Tyler, from this Steel Combat biking thing that I used to do. And he was in a band too. So I dragged him out and he dragged the drummer. And then Roger dragged his wife, who's also a drummer, for the recording tracks in the studio. And it just ended up happening really organically. But after I moved, because that was when I lived in Florida at the time, after I moved from Florida and I came here to TJ to live, I had to kind of take matters into my own hands. So like right now, Monster Wolf is just myself and a drummer. I write all the songs. I do all the arrangements, and I write all the lyrics. And I go in the studio and I track 2 guitars. I track the vocals, I track the bass, and then I have the drummer Eddie come in and do the drumming. So right now it's like a 2-man project, but it's always been like my baby from the beginning and something that I always wanted to do, like I mentioned before. So I took advantage of the fact that I had a little bit of a name in wrestling to give my band exposure, you know.
Hey man, you got to use what you got, man. At the end of the day, I ain't mad at you at all for that. Before we get going with a couple of the other questions, man, you already got a bunch of people shouting you out in the comments, man. A guy that we need to talk about, because that's where you and I met in the first place. Mr. Chandler Hopkins is watching with us. You got Robert Martier's watching with us, man. You've got a whole bunch of people who are already commenting in here. So,
That's
like
great.
I said, we appreciate all you guys watching.
Martier, he's one of my students. Hello to him down in Florida.
Hey, man, we appreciate you.
Super Bees, my boy Super Bees, he's out there too. That was awesome.
Hey man, we just appreciate that you guys are checking us out. If you haven't already done so, hit that like button, subscribe button, all that stuff, so you don't miss any of the action from us here at Knockouts and 3 Counts. But that being said, we talked a little bit about your band. Here's the thing though. When you guys make your music, is there any, like, I don't know why, but the first vibe I got when I listened to your theme song, it reminded me of like the old punk stuff that you would hear in like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Like I could totally see like that playing as you're skating through the different skate park and that. So is there any like is punk a real big influence for the way you make your music?
Well, just real, not to interrupt, sorry, I thought I could squeeze it in before the Zoom break got to you. But just looking at the background, I can already tell that's going to be where that answer is going to go, but I still want to hear it myself.
Yeah,
I knew where it was going, but that's what we're supposed to do with these things. You know,
I know. I still wanted to hear it. I wasn't saying it like that. That's
yeah, punk is literally like a huge influence. When we first started the band, it was just gonna be straight up like horror punk meets Motorhead. You know, we wanted to just blow people's heads off right off the bat. The bass player Roger, as I mentioned before, he was the original songwriter for like the first like 3 Monster Wolf songs. So he's like super into the Ramones, super into Motorhead, super into the old school punk, and I'm like into like the Misfits and stuff like that. So when you combine all that, and then you combine the fact that I'm into thrash and I'm into black metal and I'm into like bands like Motorhead and bands like that, then you get the sound that Monster Wolf is. You know, it has a lot of Motorhead influences. It has a lot of really heavy like punk rock influences, and that's kind of what we wanted to go for. The newer tracks, and that we're actually recording and we're about to go record. They're a little bit of the more like black metal, as far as the music arrangement and stuff, is a little bit towards the black metal, trash metal side, but it still has that punk vibe to it. You know, it doesn't have a lot of chords. It's not gonna be fancy. It's gonna be like straight up, down, punch you in the face, 1 to 2 minutes, in and out. Whoa, what the fuck happened? That's kind of what I want out of people when they hear it. And fun fact, we actually in October, every October, we release music, usually for Halloween. And October of last year for Halloween, we released 2 Misfits covers, which were Halloween, the song Halloween, and the song Vampire from the Misfits. And we called it 2 Hits from Hell. And that's out on all streaming platforms. So I see you tell the Misfits and like horror punk are like a huge influence on the band. So you definitely got that right.
Kind of one thing I wanted to touch on too, because you kind of said it was almost brought upon you because of circumstances with moving and so on and so forth. But you're seeing it actually a lot in rock bands and the current bands that have kind of gotten a little more popular and stuff, where it's the 2-man group, I guess you could say, where there's one person who's doing like the instrumentals and stuff in the background, and one person who's, for lack of better words, leading the dance in the creative direction. And what made you guys kind of lead in that direction, other than, like you said, circumstance kind of pushing you that way?
Well, it was really just the fact that I wanted to move out of Florida and I couldn't drag my musicians with me. And I always felt like Monster Wolf, the band, was just me, you know. I'm, like I said, I'm really into black metal, and a lot of my favorite black metal bands was usually just 2 people in the studios, like Immortal. My dog is probably trying to say hello real quick. Like bands like Immortal, bands like Bathory, you know, that was literally one guy and a drum machine. So I was like, you know what? I mean, I'm not a great guitarist. I'm not a great bass player, but I could play these instruments and I know what I want. I know that I don't want this fancy musical arrangement. I don't want people to like be like, oh man, this guy's using a so-and-so pedal and he's tuning so-and-so and he's doing all these arpeggios and stuff. No, I want people to like enjoy the music for what it is and go out there and have fun when they listen to it. And everybody that I've shown my music to, they're like, man, this is something, like you said, something that belongs to like the Tony Hawk game, because it makes you like be like hyped up, and
like
that's
bouncing around, man.
That's what I want with the music. So when I was like, you know what, even if it's just gonna be me, I even thought about buying a drum set myself, which I don't even know how to play drums. And I was like, you know what, even if it has to be me tracking voice, vocals, bass, drums, and guitars, I'll do it, because at the end of the day, Monster Wolf is my baby. Monster Wolf is my band. So it doesn't matter who comes in and out of it. As long as I'm alive, I feel like the band's going to be alive.
So we can totally relate with that here, as we talked about when we met in Texas, man. Like, you know, doing this podcast, it's like I'm still working full-time at the post office. Devin, who you met down there, is working full-time at GM, and Corey's over here hanging doors. So, I mean, we're all, you know, doing the full-time thing, kind of making this thing work as we can go. So I totally respect that grind and get it. But since we brought up Texas, that brings up a good thing that I want to ask about, and it's a good way to segue even into the wrestling. You know, when we met, we found out that it just so happened you and I went to the same Metallica tour right before, you know, with my dad passing away. You know, it was Volbeat, Avenged Sevenfold, and Metallica. Now, I got to see them obviously here in Detroit at Comerica Park, where they left the big long burn streak down center field for about 3 weeks afterwards. But I got to give credit where it's due, man. I don't know what your thoughts were on that show, man, but for me, that was a fun show because, like I said, even though the other 2 got cut, dude, even with Metallica and them being older, dude, they got up and went up for 4 hours and just banged that shit out.
Yeah, my experience was I didn't care for Volbeat or Avenged, so I just showed up late. And at the time, it was like in Florida, the concert was in Florida, so a lot of like different wrestlers were like mingling and talking. And as soon as Metallica came in and the opening song comes in, the like that orchestra stuff, I grabbed 2 beers and I just ran to where I was like sitting.
Fuck you, we're done talking.
I was like, all right, dude, like I showed up late for a reason because I didn't want to see these 2 other bands. So I went there, I got my beers, I got my merch, and I went and like, man, I've never seen them live. I don't care what anybody says. These guys put on a hell of a show, you know. I don't remember how long it was. I know that like I didn't move from my seat. I didn't want to move from my seat. It was like one of the best concerts that I actually been to in like my whole life. And all I remember is when those flames come up, dude, you could feel it. Like that whole arena got hot immediately. And it was
I can only imagine an arena because, like I said, ours was a baseball stadium, so it was
it was like a baseball stadium, like open roof, and it still hits you. So it was awesome, man. Just seeing them live. I've been a huge fan of the band since I was a kid, you know. So seeing them live was a really cool experience, and it's crazy when we were talking about it. I was like, man, that's the same tour I went to, so it's pretty cool.
Hey, man. Well, like I said, we got to meet in Texas. And your opponent from your match in Texas happens to be watching us as we speak. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about that match and your experience at Pele Pro Wrestling. So tell me what your thoughts were on that. Obviously, we were all dealing with the cold. Our buddy Isaiah Broner that came down with us from Detroit got stuck in the same shit that you and me did with the flights. But all in all, I would say that show got pretty hyped for it being a small crowd. And Psycho Clown and Sam Bout killed themselves and shit.
That was the same thing I was saying. I was like, dude, it's Friday. These guys are killing it. Like, they still got 2 other matches to go through. It was an awesome show. Honestly, like, the way it was ran felt really good, for really smooth. It felt really weird to go on first because I haven't been first in I don't remember how long, you know, probably since I was like a kid or something. But it felt really cool to be able to like go on first and enjoy the rest of the show, you know. I think we had a match that just gave the people just enough to just start off the show. I'm usually like a go balls out type of guy, you know, like I want to go in there and do like 30 minutes of just craziness. But sometimes when you are in a certain part, a certain spot in the card, you have to know why you're there.
Yeah.
So we were there to like get the crowd hot and like get them riled up for the rest of the matches. And I feel like every match did what it had to do. You know, it was a good match. It was a lot of fun. Shannon is a really good worker, and hopefully we could do it again. And we could do it under like either Pele Pro or we could do it somewhere else. But I'm one of those type of people. You know, I want to get in and have the best match possible, and then get out and have fun, you know, and that's what we did.
Shit, we all went and smashed tacos and watched Ring of Honor afterwards. It wasn't too bad of a night, dude. When you go in the bar and you realize they got Ring of Honor on the TV, don't see that too much here in Detroit, but I ain't mad at it. All right. Well, we talked about the match in Texas, and we talked a little bit about you and I bonding over the Metallica concert, but that goes a little bit deeper for you. And obviously I had to ask about it. So from my research, I was reading that when you were still doing your thing in Puerto Rico, you went under the name Hammett after Kirk Hammett. So tell me a little bit about that. What went into that? Did that ever give you like, were there any problems with like booking or marketing because of that? And I don't know. Like I said, I just found that real interesting.
Yeah. So growing up, I took that name from a backyard wrestling company that we were wrestling at when we were like 13, 14 years old. So when we were doing the backyard wrestling stuff, I was D Hammett. I don't know why, but that was like my name. So when I started wrestling, I just kept the Hammett part because Kirk Hammett was always like one of my favorite guitar players growing up, and he had the curly hair just like I did growing up. So you know what, dude? Hammett it is. So I just kept that name for however long. It was never really an issue because like nobody will ever pronounce it right in Puerto Rico. They will always go Hammett with like double D's at the end. So when I came to the state, I was Mr. 450 Hammett because I did a 450 splash, and back then there was only a handful of guys doing it. So like it was like one of those things that I dragged from my backyard wrestling days into my pro wrestling career, and I just kept it for however long, and I don't regret it at all, man. You know, it's like one of those things that you like go by, you know, it's things that you do throughout your career. You know, you start somewhere and then you end somewhere else. So like going from that to what I am now, and if you would have told me that you will be this werewolf, mechanical werewolf guy. I don't know. 20 years from now, I would have been like, whatever, dude. You know, like Hammett was like my thing, you know, and it was just funny. To me now, it's just funny, and it's crazy because like now I'm into other guitarists and stuff, and I'm still very heavily influenced by Kurt, but there's other guitarists that I like now, and I'm like, oh man, what if I like Dave Mustaine would have been the Mustaine, you know? Like, I don't know, just funny like that. But I think it was like one of those names that ended up working out with my wrestling, so I just kept it forever long.
And the ironic part about the fact that you like Dave Mustaine is we were talking about that beforehand, because Corey's like, I'm trying to think, wasn't there a guy who left Metallica and ended up, and I was like, yeah, dude. I was like,
for some reason, I have this terrible thing of getting Iron Maiden and Megadeth confused. For some reason, I can't tell you why. It's just one of those switches. For some reason, they got crossed. The names just get confused sometimes, so it takes me a second to like elaborate which one's which.
All right, so since we talked about Metallica, I'll let you answer this as well, Corey. What are your top 3 Metallica songs?
Ooh, on the spot.
It's what we like to do. We get the hard-hitting questions here, bro.
See, honestly, like, I do very much enjoy Metallica, but to like name off individual tracks, it's like, it's not the band that I go actively search to listen to. So
okay,
like,
if you can't do 3, is there a favorite?
Well, I feel like the cop-out would be Enter Sandman, but there really is truly so many better songs than that, in my opinion. It's just off the top of my titles are not my forte.
All
but
right.
That being said, I am actually a big Metallica fan. It's just not like actively searched out, I guess you could say.
Back in the day, they used to call those guys posers, but
shots fired. Got him. And the best part is, before we started this, he's showing me his new wall. He's got his Warped Tour thing up there on the wall.
That's what I'm saying. I literally just had to take down my Warped 2012
got him!
merch. So,
and to think I sent you notes earlier and everything. God damn it.
My punk game's a little different. That's all I'm trying to say. You know?
Hey, considering my first concert was Warped Tour 2, I have no hate for Warped Tour. All right. It's now your turn. What are your top 3 Metallica songs?
Ooh, man. Fight Fire with Fire.
Okay.
The Four Horsemen for sure.
That's a good one too.
Which Megadeth has their own version of that called Mechanics, which is about the same riff, but it's a little bit like faster, and it doesn't have any.
Go check that out after we get off this, man.
It actually has to do with being in love with your car, or like just fucking your car or something like that. Fun fact. I really like Fade to Black. Man, I can just go all night naming favorite Metallica songs. Like there's so many. There's just it's mostly like the older ones. Anything like, I'm one of those weirdos that likes everything Metallica up till like Injustice for All, and then like a couple of songs from the Black Album. But yeah, those would be probably like my favorite 3, honestly.
Okay, so you got a lot of people from Puerto Rico shouting you out, and I can't speak Spanish, so I see all of you guys in comments. I appreciate.
Saludos a la gente de Puerto Rico.
I appreciate y'all, man. But all right, so for me, Enter Sandman's one of them, and there's a reason why. Because you got to realize I'll be 29 this year. So when I grew up watching wrestling, I started watching in about 98, 99. Sandman was still huge. That entrance that he had with Enter Sandman, plus, like I said, my dad was like a Metallica freak. So my dad listened to Metallica all the time. And what's the number 1 song that comes on the radio for Metallica most of the time? It's Enter Sandman. So that's got to be number 1, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. As I've gotten older, though, my favorites have changed, right? Because as we spoke about when we were at Cartel Taco, shout out to Cartel Taco. When we were sitting there, like, I have went through like this, and we were talking about like the different songs and things. It's funny, as I've gotten older, I find myself like Unforgiven 2 has been a favorite of mine lately. I've been playing that a lot. I like a lot of the slower songs, but again, I was learning how to play guitar for a lot of 2019, I put it down a little bit. I haven't done it as much, but I was learning how to play Fade to Black. I learned how to play a little bit of One. I learned how to play, some Pink Floyd stuff and stuff like that. So obviously One has to be, all right. So I'll go Enter Sandman, and then 2 and 3 are going to be, number 2 is going to be tied between Sad But True and One. And then the third one for me would be Unforgiven too, just because I like that it's kind of like, it still has that hard feel to it, but it's not quite right up in your face as much as some of the other stuff. So there's a little bit of an array for it. But now that we've crossed into the wrestling side of things, in doing my research and all those things, you've gotten to wrestle in a bunch of different styles, from in Puerto Rico to Mexico to getting to do some stuff with WWE and things like that. With him being in the news a lot lately, I thought it would be a good idea to talk a little bit. I saw you had quite the rivalry with Conan back in Puerto Rico. So tell me a little bit about that, and what are the biggest differences you saw from your time in Puerto Rico to when you came over here to the States?
As far as differences, I would say the crowd in Puerto Rico is more used to just the old school brawling style and a big soap opera that leads to a bigger match. And the difference from that in the States is when you come to the States, they're a little bit more like wrestling influence, but also more entertaining. The entertainment part of the business has a big part in your matches. When in Puerto Rico, there's only certain guys that have like that entertaining factor in their matches. So they're usually in the first few matches. And then later on in the card, it's like you got your heavy hitters. You have like your Carlos Colon, which is Carlito Caribbean's cool's dad, like who's a legend. You have guys like Ray Gonzalez who are just like, are gonna go out there, they're gonna brawl, they're gonna cut a hell of a promo that leads to a bigger match next week or a month from now or whatever. And then going from that style and then coming to the States where it's like a little bit more wrestling influence and more entertainment influence, I had to flip the switch and try to come up with a character, because down in Puerto Rico, you really didn't need a character. At the time, it wasn't really necessary. You could just go out there, you could wrestle, you could throw your drop kicks, your 2 clotheslines, a couple of punches, and the people were going to be into it. But when you come here and you try that here in the States, it was completely different, and the people wouldn't click. So you had to completely switch your style. So when I moved to Chicago in 2008, after being in Puerto Rico for so long, wrestling for so long, it was one of those things that I had to just completely switch my style and then add more elements and layers to the character of who Mr. 450 Hammett was at the time. I needed to like figure out who I was. So I went the basic, oh, you're a Puerto Rican wrestler route, because that's what everybody was advising at the time. Everybody's like, okay, you should come out with Puerto Rican wrestling flags. You should come out with reggaeton music. You should come out dancing. And this is what you should do. And that's what everybody advised at the time. And I was like, whatever, I'll do that if it works. If that's what's going to get me over, like, that's what I'm going to do. And I hated it, because it wasn't me, So at first it was like an uphill battle, because I was like doing something that wasn't organic, As far as the wrestling is concerned, I was doing the moves that I wanted to do. I was executing the moves and everything that I wanted to do and telling the story that I wanted to tell with my moves. But as far as the character, it wasn't who I was. So at first it was like kind of like, oh man, like it was like an uphill battle, like I was saying earlier, because you're fighting with this like new territory and like trying to like show people who you are. But by showing people who you are, you have to kind of like stop,
dumb down your stuff.
So yeah.
How hard was that transition on you? I mean,
it was a little bit hard, because it was a struggle with trying to find what would be the right character to do at the time. I just went the Puerto Rican route because it was what everybody advised. I am Puerto Rican, obviously, and there wasn't that Puerto Rican wrestlers in Chicago at the time, whereas now.
I just thought you spent a lot of time in the tanning bed, bro.
You know, which is now everybody and their mama is a Puerto Rican wrestler, even if they were in New York for living in New York and they have Puerto Rican parents. Oh, I'm Puerto Rican now. So it's like now there's too many, but back then in 2008 there wasn't that many. So I was able to get over and get it over, but now I don't think it will be the same, you know.
So in that off of that, I mean, what was the big change between, you know, Hammett and all that when you came over here? How did that, like, where did the change come to what we see from Mecha Wolf now? Like the Mecha Wolf we see now versus what we saw there. What was the big thing that made you have the change with the paint and the whole deal, man? Because when you come out with the full thing with the cape and all that shit, dude, if it was some little kid and he didn't know better, you'd either scare the shit out of him or he'd think it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, well, it was like a lot of trial and error, you know. I feel like it's kind of like when bands release an album and when they release their first album and they go to the second and the third and the fourth, they change looks and they change parts of what the band is with the records. Maybe because the label is like, okay, we want you guys to cut your hair, we want you guys to wear jackets in this particular cover. I've always been a big into music and I've always used a lot of the things in music to influence my career. So I was always really big into change. You have to change, you have to adapt, and you have to update your look or whatever it is. Either you get new gear or you grow some longer hair, you grow a beard or whatever it is. I feel like characters should evolve with time or else you get stale, right? So I went from the transition of Hammett in Puerto Rico to Mr. 450 Hammett, then brought that to the States. Then I went to Japan and then they just they wanted me to be Mr. 450, just Mr. 450 in Japan. So I went to Japan, lived in Japan for a few months, and I came back to the States and I kept the Mr. 450 and then took the Hammett part. That's when I had adopted the like Super Saiyan Dragon Ball Z look into my character because at the time I was the only person doing it and I was just came back from Japan. So I was getting legit scouters and legit vintage Dragon Ball Z stuff and bringing it over to the States with me. And I applied it to my gimmick, but I got hurt. And after I got hurt and I dislocated, I like tore my meniscus in my right knee and it was really, really bad. And I went and I did the surgery and I did the rehab. So while I was in rehab, I was like, dude, I have to come back with something completely different. And I didn't have the name to go with it. I was still Mr. 450, but I was slowly shaping my look into what Mecha Wolf was going to be. And finally, Sami Callihan from Impact Wrestling, he's like, hey, man, you look like a werewolf. Boy, you look like a machine. You're like a Mecha Wolf. You should be the Mecha Wolf. And he just kept bugging me for like 3 weeks straight. Just kept saying this over and over. And finally, we're like about to do like this Wrestle Circus pay-per-view this day. And he's like, hey, let me see your phone. So I gave him my phone. And he sends himself all these pictures from my phone with like the look that I had at the time. And just changes my Twitter, changes my banner, changes everything to the Mecha Wolf. And he's like, what do you think? It looks cool? I was like, yeah, it looks pretty cool, but what am I going to do about this? He's like, you got to do it today, man. You got to do it today. You got to change your name today. Like, we have a night pay-per-view today. Today's the day to do it. So we called the promoter. He changes everything. So now I'm like the Mecha Wolf, right? And I'm like scared as hell. Like, right before I'm going to come out, I'm like, man, I don't know if people are going to dig this. Like, I don't even have the mask or anything yet. I just have a cape with the fur. And I had newer gear and my hair and the contacts and the mouthpiece. And I was like, oh man. So I came out and I like howled and then everybody in the venue started howling. And I was like, okay, I got him. This is going to work. And I kept it and I just kept rolling with it ever since, you know.
That's one thing I was actually going to ask you. I mean, you partially elaborated on it there, but what is that, I guess, nervous energy of unveiling a new character like? Because you said you've gone through it multiple times and in different variations like you're kind of elaborating on, but I mean it's gotta be a weird feeling, I would imagine.
It's like you're just used to going to a certain, I don't know, restaurant for like all your life, and you know they make your eggs just how you like it, they make your bacon just how you like it, but then they close it, and now you gotta go to another restaurant, and it's like that uncertainty, like, oh, is it gonna be as good? And then you start comparing this restaurant to the other restaurant, and you're like, and you shouldn't compare it. You should be like, oh, this is like a complete new thing, a complete new experience. So it's very nerve-wracking because sometimes those changes could make or break a person. And to me, it was that fear inside where like, oh man, I might fail, or this might not work, or somebody might boo it, or somebody's gonna be like, oh, that's goofy as hell, you know. But I was like, whatever, dude. That was a guy dressed up as a Saiyan, you know what I mean? Like in a Saiyan armor. Like they got beat in NXT in like 5 seconds. So who gives a damn if I'm a werewolf now? You know what I mean? Like if it doesn't work, whatever, try something else. But it worked, and I was able to roll with it, you know. And I'm really grateful that I had people that pushed me to do it, you know.
So you just mentioned it a little bit. What are your thoughts on getting to do the things you did with 205 Live? I know that you were supposed to be an alternate for the Cruiserweight Classic and all that. Like, what was your thoughts on your experience there? A and B, did you think that they were going to call you back for like the next Cruiserweight Classic, or, you know, all the big 205 Live stuff? Or what are your thoughts on your time and the stuff you got to do with WWE?
Well, originally at the time they were gonna have a Cruiserweight Classic 2, and that's what ended up being, I believe, the Mae Young Classic. They switched it. So to me, it was, I always tell people, it was like a really good learning experience, because it was one of those things that you dreamed about your whole life. Like, what's it like being in the WWE, this and this and that, you know, and you worked so hard all your life to get there. And then when you get there, it's like you still have a lot more climbing to do. It's not like, it's kind of like a checkpoint, you know, just getting there, you know. So to me, it was like a big learning experience. It was really cool that I got to do it with a lot of my friends who were also in the indies, that either ended up getting signed, ended up in NXT, or ended up in 205 Live. So it felt like being almost at home, you know, because everywhere you turn, you knew somebody. It was really cool to do the things that I got to do at the time, but I felt that at the time, maybe mentally I wasn't ready for those opportunities. What, as far as now, if you were to tell me, okay, tomorrow you got to do 205 Live, I will be completely mentally and physically prepared for it. At the time, it was like one of those things that I was just so excited to just be there, you know. And like I said, it was like a really big learning experience and a really big eye-opening experience, because it just lets you know how much more work you still got to do once you get in there, you know. Because it's not just like, okay, I'm here and I'm gonna call the shots. You know, that's not how it is. Like, you're there and you still got a hell lot more work to do, and
Still
you
got
got
to
a
prove
big,
yourself.
big mountain to climb. You know, and there's other people trying to climb the same mountain, either next to you, below you, or above you. So you kind of have to work hard and be completely different. So every time I showed up there, I either showed up in better shape, different hair, different beard, better suit, you name it, dude. You name it. I tried everything to be noticed. And when I was noticed, that's when I was put as an extra and alternate into the Cruiserweight Classic. And to me, it was like one of the big experiences of my life, because I trained for that like I was going into the biggest fight of my life. I got into the best shape I could. I hired a nutritionist. I hired a coach. I was working out twice a day. I was, you know, eating right, doing the right things. And I got there and I looked great. And I was with a bunch of my friends, Nancy Dorado, Rich Swan. Like, it was just awesome being there and getting those opportunities. And, you know, at the same time, it was really heartbreaking because I got hurt there too. So it's like, oh man, like, it was like right when my big opportunity was coming,
Somebody pulled the rug out.
you know what I mean? Like, I showed up and I wasn't physically ready when I should have been. And it was like a big punch in the face because now I had to like rehab. Now I had to get surgery. I had to rehab, and then I had to regain all that work that I did. I have to do it all over again, you know. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I find it interesting you brought up that you hired a nutritionist and all that stuff, because self-admittedly, on the podcast, we do both MMA and wrestling. I'm more of the MMA side myself. And that's something you kind of hear from a lot of the fighters that are tending to take this more serious and try to take that next step in their career. It wasn't something I necessarily correlated to wrestling, to be honest with you. And to hear somebody say that, yeah, I hired a nutritionist and stuff to just build up my body and build that physique that I felt would be perfect for wrestling. It's an interesting look. I honestly didn't correlate those two dots. I don't necessarily know why either.
I told you, Corey, it's only going to take so long of you doing this show before you start looking at wrestling and fighting different.
I mean, essentially, we're like preparing like the people that really take it seriously. You want to be in the best shape as possible because you might wrestle a grappler, you might wrestle a high flyer, you might wrestle a power guy. So you have to be prepared in all aspects of the game. And I feel like the body is very important to go with the complete package. That is the gimmick, the look, and the way you wrestle, the way you speak. So to me, I was like, you know what, dude, if this is gonna be my last shot, I'm gonna give it my all. So I was willing to do anything in my power to get physically in the shape that I needed to be, and that included hiring somebody that was knowledgeable and knew what he was doing, because I didn't. So, and that, I feel like that gave me an advantage over a lot of the guys, because physically there was only 5 guys that you could pull out of that 205 live tournament and be like, okay, these guys look like $1 million. Not putting anything on anybody else. I'm not shaming anybody or anything like that, but you could tell the guys that were really putting in the work backstage getting ready for this tournament. You know what I mean?
Hey, totally respect it. And guys that have shared the ring are over here shouting you out in the comments as well. Shout out to Cruz Carrillo, talking about big shout out to Mecha Wolf, most humble and down to earth person I've met, and a beast. Hella stoked on sharing the ring with him. Hope to do it again soon. So
hell yeah, thank you.
Hey man, you've got quite the reputation, and obviously if people are enjoying working with you, that's a good sign. In the current state that we're in 2021, like what are your goals now at this point? Do you want to take another shot at a WWE or an AEW, or are you content in Mexico or Puerto Rico? Like like now it seems like more now than ever with what we're seeing with this Impact AEW thing and the prospects that maybe that could bring, because I know they're doing their thing with AAA. Do you see yourself getting back on there on the main TV spot?
It's definitely one of my goals. I definitely want to do it with my partner, Bestia 666. We're a really good tag team when we work together, and on the road, outside of the ring, inside of the ring, we are a really good unit. And that's another one of the guys that I feel like he deserves his due.
He's great.
All the other guys from Mexico have passed him by, and he's amazing. And he's also the son of a freaking legend here in Mexico. So
Maybe.
I feel like he's one of those people that needs to be in TV ASAP. And
well, he was doing something with MLW for a minute, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did a couple matches with them, and then we did a tag match here in Tijuana with them too. But that was the last of it, because obviously this whole pandemic thing started. So definitely it's one of the goals. Whether it's we're more aiming towards AEW, Ring of Honor, and then use that to catapult ourselves into a bigger spot, which would be eventually going to the WWE.
Well, dude, I mean,
it's like
you guys as a tag team, I could think of a dope matchup right off rip if we're talking Ring of Honor. I mean, we just had past guest of our show, Shane Taylor, and Shane Taylor Promotions just took the 6-man titles from him. But dude, I mean, if you want to show what you guys what you guys are capable of doing, I mean, you guys versus Mexa Squad, or Roosh and all those guys that have been in there, or I mean, hell, you guys against Shane Taylor and them would be dope. So, like I said, I see a lot of cool matchups, not only in Ring of Honor, but AEW would be obviously cool too, as they're starting to bring in, a lot more guys. So I definitely would like to see, where you end up with that. Let me ask you one more question with that before we get on to something else. So the news came out yesterday that after all those years, the Big Show finally left WWE and went to AEW. What do you think about all the big changes that we're seeing across wrestling? Because I feel like more so now, more so than any other time, I think, since maybe the Attitude Era, where you saw dudes jumping ship every week. I think this is the first time you're really seeing big moves like that made in a very long time. So what are your thoughts on like the mainstream scene right now?
I feel like I'm in the MCU. Like, it's like, whoa, like people and movies that you never thought were gonna cross over are crossing over, and I feel like I'm in a Marvel movie, and I feel like this is just the beginning of it, and like eventually, like all the cool people that you think are gonna be in one place are gonna end up in another place, and that's what's so cool about wrestling. Like I was talking with my girlfriend earlier, and we were watching AEW Dynamite, and just hearing Tony Schiavone just reminds me of when I was a kid, clicking through the channel, watching WCW, clicking back to watch WWF, because it brings like that nostalgia of when you were a kid, you know. So just being involved in the business now, whether you're on A side or B side, it doesn't matter. It's cool as hell, because I feel like we're all getting things that we will never dream that will be possible, you know. It just feels like being in the late 90s, early 2000s all over again, and it's just pretty cool. And I feel like there's more opportunities also for the little guys like us, guys like people that were never gonna get that opportunity they're getting it now. People that
like John Silver.
You know, like
he's the first one I think of when I think of that company like that, man, because that guy.
People that you didn't think were going to get a shot are now getting signed. You know, people that are like 150 pounds are getting signed. You know, when before you had to be like a giant, weigh 300 pounds, you know, be like 6'3" and over. And like now it's like, it's rare to see guys like that get signed. Now you see like your boys getting signed, and it's like crazy. You know, it's pretty cool. It's really cool. Like I said, I feel like I'm in like a crazy Marvel movie, and it's just getting started.
All right, so you brought it up. Like I told you when we were talking before we got on the show, I got a random bug up my ass to be watching the Captain America Winter Soldier, because somebody kept talking about the scene with GSP in it and stuff. I was like, all right, I'll go back and watch it again. So, what's your favorite Marvel movie, and were you a big comic guy your whole life, or do you just like the movies?
I have a stack of comics right over there. Actually, I'm more of a DC guy, honestly. I'm huge into like the X-Men stuff since I was a kid. As far as the movies, my favorite one of the MCU or Marvel period. Oh man, probably Blade.
Okay.
And probably the first Deadpool for sure. And then like the first X-Men movie has like a big place in my heart. The very first X-Men movie, and Blade for sure. Blade is probably like one of my favorites ever. As far as the MCU, I will probably go with, man, I love Iron Man because I'm a Tony Stark guy. But yeah,
Tony Stark had all the coolest shit. How can you not like Tony Stark?
Yeah, dude, he's the man. So like, I've been into comics all my life. Mostly like anything that has to do with Marvel, I stick to like Wolverine. Wolverine's probably like my favorite X-Men. I have a lot of X-Men stuff, a lot of Wolverine stuff, and the rest is just DC stuff, Batman and Green Arrow and Aquaman and stuff like that.
All right, so did you get down the WandaVision wormhole? Because Gino did, because we had quite the conversation about it. All right.
Me and my girlfriend watch it every time it comes out. Usually we watch it before I leave for the road, or I come back from the road and we watch the episode that just showed. So we're all caught up and it's getting pretty good.
All right, so you got to give me your thoughts and theories so far, because self-admittedly, when we were down there freezing our balls off in Texas, because it wasn't too far different from home, Devin, our co-host that you got to meet down there, these guys are all more into comics, right? So he's like, bro, you got to watch WandaVision. He sat me down. I watched all 6 episodes before we went out to watch the fights that night. And then I'm like, well, fuck. Now I went and got Disney Plus. That's why I was watching Captain America, just because I had to watch the 7th episode. And all I can say after watching that new episode, if you guys haven't watched it yet, well, too late. But fuck yeah. All right. I knew there was something with her when they had the thing with Vision when he went to her car, man. But boy, after the way they ended that last one, man, boy, are we in for a treat in the next episode. So what are you thinking so far, man?
Well, since I'm familiar with the stuff in the comics, it's just cool to see it all be unveiled on a TV show. At first, it started so crazy, and it's just kept getting better and better and better and better and better. And I just kept putting two and two together because of the certain colors some character will wear. Or I watch a lot of like YouTube videos, so like I follow this one guy on YouTube, and he was like breaking down some of the episodes, and I was like, yeah, I knew that was right. So like just for example, like one as kids, you know, their colors that they wear, that they wear represent the characters that they're gonna be once they're older and the powers that they're gonna have. Same thing with Agatha, same thing with Vision. So it's just cool to see all these things that you read in comic books just come to life, and you're like, I knew it was right. Like, or like me and my girl will start like theorizing, and she'll have like a theory, and I'll have a theory, and then we'll like ping pong off each other. So I think it's one of those shows that is gonna make people, because you don't know, you know what I mean? You don't know till you know, or if you didn't read the books, you wouldn't know. So it's just really cool the journey that this show is taking people in, and the way they produced it is so different from everything else that I feel like it's gonna be like the catalyst for like the rest of the other Marvel shows are gonna be shown in the Disney Channel, because every show is gonna have to be better than WandaVision, because now they got
some heat with
Wanda.
it. See, I was trying to tell Corey, because Corey hadn't watched it. He's like, bro, I keep hearing people talking about this WandaVision. I was like, bro, I'm telling you, you got to listen to me, man. All right, Corey, that's 2 guests in a week telling you to watch it. When you gonna get off your ass to watch it?
See, here's the thing, right? If it ain't MMA or if it ain't 2 men playing some sports, I probably ain't watching it, and I'm probably on the Xbox. So that, truth be said, TV shows are just a hard thing for me to make time for anymore. But like I kind of asked last week, I guess we could say, I'm curious on your thoughts on this too. It must be a damn good show, because it's got everybody so damn interested in the fact that the shows are actually a week apart, like we used to see throughout the history of TV. It's really kind of done something to generate hype in my eyes, at least from an outside perspective in. It's like the anticipation building week to week seems to really add something to the show. Am I wrong? Or it just is my opinion.
Leave them deadly cliffhangers, bro. They leave you like you some bitches. They get you just on that hook, and then it's like, no, fuck you. You gotta wait.
Well, everybody's so used to everything being a full season drop on one of the streaming sites, like stuff now, that it's like, okay, well, that was a cool whole season of TV, and I guess I'll wait another year for the next one. Too bad I watched that in a day and a half. And it's like, you know, you lose the anticipation and the build and everything like that. I feel like that's something that's almost missing from modern TV.
Hey man, I completely agree with it, but I had to get your thoughts once you told me that with the MCU stuff. Last but not least, man, you know, another thing that we got to chat about while we were there in Texas, man, I know you're getting ready to welcome a baby girl, man. So first of all, congratulations on that. And how many different ways have you thought of to kill the first boyfriend yet?
Well, I own about 3 different axes. 2 that are pretty sharp, and a big sword, and a big spear. So there's plenty of ways. It's more like I've thought about ways that I could intimidate future boyfriends. My girlfriend just said I'm already scary, so I don't think it's gonna be too hard. She's gonna play the good cop. I'll play the bad cop for sure. But yeah, I'm just mostly excited because it's one of those things that it happened in like the right time, you know. And I'm really just lucky and blessed to be able to like go through this whole experience with her and be able to like enjoy going to every single appointment and everything. Because I know in the States, a lot of people are not allowed, couples, to go into every single like gynecologist appointment or whatever. Mm-hmm. Here in Mexico, we could go together, and the places that you can't go together, we still go because they don't know English, so I gotta translate. So it's really cool that we're like able to just experience this whole thing together. And like, I'm actually taking time off the road after she's here for like a couple of months, just so be able to take care of her and help out and everything. I'm really excited, man. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, congratulations, man. As a father of two, as a father of two girls myself, it's a little life altering. I can tell you that.
I know that's what everybody says, so I'm just ready, man. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
it just it's a change of perspective more than anything. I don't know if you grew up with any girls in the house or anything like that, but me growing up, it was just me and my brother, right? And me and him, we actually have an 8-year difference ourselves. So essentially, it was
He's
just
bigger
me
than
for
both of us
most of
at
the
this point.
childhood, with a couple cousins and stuff. But having daughters, man, it really does. It opens your eyes up to the whole experience of a girl, I guess you could say. And it's just it's a different aspect of life it's very welcomed on this end. It's changed my outlook on a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey man, well, like I said, we appreciate the time. We appreciate you coming to mess with us on the show. Like I said, if you guys are watching this and haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button on all the podcast platforms, YouTube, all that good stuff. And hey man, I'm just glad you guys got some better weather down that way now. And like I said, man, we'll definitely have to stay in touch, and it definitely will hopefully be the first time of many at bringing you back on Knockouts and Three Counts.
Thank you for having me, man. And like I said, just excited to be able to do this. A lot of people are not able to wrestle. A lot of people are not able to go out and perform in front of a crowd. So I'm just one of those lucky ones that has been able to like keep working throughout the pandemic. So that's thanks to everybody in the companies that bring me over, like people like Pele Pro, people like Martinez Entertainment. That's where I'm going to be this weekend. Their companies are doing it the right way, safely, and not putting people at risk, not putting the wrestlers at risk, and that's how it should be. And as far as I know, I'm going to continue doing this as long as I can. So.
Hey man, well, like I said, we appreciate you. And if you guys are new here, make sure you check us out live every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. And like I said, stay tuned, because you never know just what you're gonna see from your boys here at Knockouts and Three Counts. And until next time, and in the in-between time, peace. All right.